Page 46. How many in the room has ever had a shuttle valve out of one of these manifolds on the old joystick or the rocker switch console system? How many in the room has ever taken one out? I don't see any hands at all. That's how rare it is. In one other class, I had one person to raise their hand. And this is my third class for this week. So this is how rare it is. This is something that typically don't happen. You typically don't cut an O-ring here. You typically don't have contamination as long as you'll do your engine, your hydraulic oil filter changes and checking your strainer and all that kind of stuff. You don't run into those problems as long as you'll have regular intervals with those strainer and filter changes. But if it were to ever happen and you get to an impasse as to, I don't know what it is, I don't know what else to do, well, the next thing you're going to do is pick up the phone and call us. And if we happen to think it's this, we're going to have you to turn to this page and we're going to talk about it. We're going to mutually decide that you might need to check into this. But let me tell you something, guys. This page right here, don't take it for granted. If you think, well, this is it, I'll just start pulling these things out and checking O-rings and stuff, you can make your problem worse than what it already is. I promise you, I've done it before. Just start willy-nilly pulling these things out and checking O-rings and stuff. You can make your problem worse than it already is, and now we're chasing multiple problems instead of the one that you can't find. And really the key to it, the secret to it, and I learned this the hard way too, is if you ever take a shuttle valve out, now understand we don't use these anymore. They're internal in the valve now, they're all permanent and we don't have to deal with them anymore. On the older manifold system with the joystick and the rocker switch console, that's what they were in. So that kind of stopped about 4 or 5 years ago. But on this right here, when you pull one out and you inspect it, look for cut, nicked O-ring or missing O-ring or something like that, everything looks okay, take some wheel bearing grease or chassis grease and mop that thing down good before you put it back up in the hole. Somebody said, well, man, there's hydraulic oil running out of that hole. Isn't that good enough for lubricant? No, it's not. You got to have some wheel bearing grease or chassis grease to lubricate that thing before you put it back up in there. If you don't, I guarantee you're going to cut an O-ring. Because the first time I ever dealt with one of these, before I knew anything about it, I bet I cut 15 O-rings in a row and got so frustrated at it. So I called the manufacturer and said, man, you got to have some kind of special tool or something, you know, to keep from cutting O-rings. Nope, that's not it. He says, have you tried any grease? I said, grease? You know, there's oil running out of it. Ain't good enough. You got to put some grease on it. So hung up with him on my way back to the truck. That man is blowing smoke up my butt. You know, I didn't believe what he was saying. He was right. Wheel bearing grease, chassis grease, right back in there, everything was fine. So, you know, there are times when you question yourself, but you need to listen to the wise ones that have been through this. So we're not really going to go over that page. If you get to a problem like this, we're going to be on the phone talking to each other, and we're going to agree that this needs to be done. But don't do it ahead of time. Don't make my problem worse than what it's going to be. Don't make your problem worse than what it's going to be by just arbitrarily pulling these things out. Please don't do that. Page 47 gives you the view of the valve. Up at the top of the page, we've got a rear view. In the middle of the page, we've got a top view. And then down lower, we've got a front view and then a bottom view. Now, your port identification that we talked about earlier for your plumbing diagram and stuff, this is a better port identification right here on this page. It also shows you adjustments and stuff on this valve. I won't necessarily go over these because we typically do that in a class, but this valve is now 5 years old and older now, so you don't have as many of, but I realize you do have some. So anytime you need to make any adjustments, as far as flow controls, finding shuttle valves, and remember, before you go pulling shuttle valves, call me first. Let's talk about it before you go do that. This would be an area that we would go to make some of those adjustments and things. The valves are fairly simple and straightforward. A lot of those valves you can actually find from a local supplier if you needed those. A lot of those have the manufacturer part number, which is Parker. These valves are Parker valves on this manifold. All right, page 48 is actually a hydraulic schematic. There's a lot of manufacturers out there in the world that absolutely, under no circumstances, will send you a hydraulic schematic of their hydraulic system because they don't want you to know their secrets. Well, I look at it this way. You guys got to work on it. I don't have no secrets. We're in this together. I was in the shop, I've been down this road before, and it's very frustrating not to be able to get a schematic and understand this thing, when you're trying to troubleshoot it. Well, I look at it, from your side of it, is you need that schematic once in a while to be able to read that diagram and understand, what port it comes out of and what port it goes into. So where other manufacturers view that as trade secrets, we don't. We don't have any secrets. We're just making hydraulic fluid squirt, that's all. A couple of the other pages that we've got in here are tailgate related. And let's jump over here to page 50. It shows the hardware and stuff for a tailgate. Any kind of parts or pieces you need for a tailgate latching system. Also understand that even though it does not show it on this picture because it's an older style, our tailgate latching hardware has grease fittings on it now. So we do have grease fittings on this latching hardware for tailgate. So keep that in mind. There are grease fittings there now. Used to in years past there was not. One question that often gets asked, they see the cylinder over here on the left-hand side and they see that manual tailgate handle over on the front left corner of the body. Somebody says, well, I've got an air tailgate on it, but if my air tailgate's leaking, can I put a handle over here on the front left-hand corner until I get it repaired? Absolutely not. Do not put an air tailgate cylinder and a handle on the same dump bed, because a lot of people don't know it, but that air cylinder has over 700 pounds of thrust when you activate that thing. Can you imagine the uppercut you're going to get if you're standing right there by the driver's door and you get hit by that handle? 700 pounds of thrust from that cylinder. It's going to be a Mike Tyson or a Holmes like you've never seen. So no, absolutely do not. You can put one or the other, but not both. I do get that question asked once in a while. A lot of this stuff in here, you may already be familiar. Let's go to